This video is created for educational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice. Any financial decisions should be made with careful consideration and prior analysis. Hey there, Nathan here. Today I want to try something a little different. A small experiment, comparing two approaches to analyze the work of my AI assistant versus the ideas suggested by ChatGPT. Yeah. Sounds a little bit like the start of a science show, but really, it's just a simple way to show how different algorithms can process the same situation. My assistant is a result of 9 months of work with my team. It helps sharpen focus, cut through the noise, and highlight the areas worth paying closer attention to. ChatGPT, on the other hand, is great at offering creative angles and unexpected ideas. So, this is a cool opportunity to watch two approaches in action: the structured, task-specific assistant I daily use and ChatGPT, with its broader generalized perspective. One helps organize and prioritize data, the other sparks ideas you might not have considered. If you are curious about how these two worlds intersect, stick around. I will walk you through it clearly with no overwhelm. By the way, if you are curious how all this plays out in real workflow, feel free to check out my community, link in the description and pinned comment. There I share how I personally approach analysis both with and without the help of my assistant. What I look at first, where I pause, how I think through situations. All it happens calmly, without pressure or rush. You can watch, ask questions, and explore things at your own pace. If that format feels like a good fit, you are more than welcome. Alright, let me get into the experiment. Well, friends, let's begin with ChatGPT. First, we choose the team we'll be working with. That's all for now. We won't be using any additional tools today. I'm curious to see how the chat performs on its own. Alright, let's begin, friends. So, we're getting a signal to go down. I see that the overall movement is downward. The structure holds each new pullback is becoming less significant. Right now, we're seeing a continuation of the main trend after a small rise. In such situation, it's logical to follow the current momentum. Alright, that was pretty clear for me. Let's move on. The chat indicates an upward move. Okay, let's see what's happening. Earlier, there was a strong downward impulse, but then it paused and began to gradually recover. Now the movement has shifted toward previous levels, where there was already some activity. This could suggest renewed interest in those zones, so it makes sense to continue an upward move. And that's exactly what happened. Let's see here. Up. Alright, whatever you say, ChatGPT. We see a strong, consistent move in one direction. A series of higher heights without major pauses. This may indicate a desire to continue climbing. At this point, there is confirmation, and a decision is made up to go up. But I'm not entirely convinced. And look at that. Soon after, there is a reaction at a previously active zone that had already stopped the movement before. A reversal occurs and the price heads back the other way. There it is. The chat made a mistake. Well, let's give it another chance. Things happen. The chat suggests we move downward. We see that the chart has stopped advancing actively in one direction and is now oscillating within certain boundaries. Right now, it's near the top edge of this range, where previous reversal occurred. Based on that, the decision is made to go down. Well, I can't argue with that. Let's do one more. I'm starting to get the urge to take over myself. When you're working with a large amount of data, especially in real time, the ability to quickly extract what really matters is a key. But that's not always easy, especially when your head's cluttered with noise. That's where my AI assistant comes in. It helps organize the flow, catches subtle details you might miss and makes the entire process more focused. With it, I'm able to make faster, more confident decisions without losing sight of what's important. Inside the community, I regularly show how I use this approach in live sessions. It's a hands-on format where you can observe how it all works, ask questions, and discover new tools to support your own thinking. Links in the description or pinned comment. Let's keep going. After the analysis, the chart suggests an upward move. Okay, it's working. Previously, the price was going down, but then the recovery began and the chart started to rise. Based on the chart's behavior, continued movement in that direction was expected and a corresponding decision was made. However, what followed was a pullback, and the upward movement wasn't as strong as expected. Sometimes, the chart gives signs that the movement may continue, especially after a pause and change of direction. The chat noticed such a setup and suggested going up. We went along with the idea, but as happens, the trend didn't develop right away, and the chart pulled back a bit. This happens too. It's important to watch and learn. Alright, now let me test my own assistant and see if there is a difference in the results. Okay, let's start as usual. I'm keeping the value at 28, but I will add a couple of tools that I personally use to track the situation. My assistant doesn't need them, but I want you to see how the bot's decisions align with indicators readings. I chose MACD and RSI. MACD helps detect possible trend reversals, while RSI shows whether the price has gone too far in one direction, usually followed by a correction. Now, let's choose a team and get started. Alright, I'm ready and so is my assistant. The bot runs an analysis. We've got a signal to go up. I see the general trend is upward. There is steady movement with the new local highs. After a recent dip, the situation has started to change. Clear green signs appear on the chart. RSI crosses the center line upward, which could indicate renewed buying interest. MACD also turns in the same direction. All these signs suggest the previous pullback is weakening and the upward movement may continue. Well, not a bad start. Let's keep going. Moving on. My assistant says we should go up again. I know that movement is happening within a narrow range. The main trend was previously upward and now there is a chance it will continue. Let's watch. Let's keep going, friends. Okay, what do we have here? Another rise. I see a steady upward movement and now there is a temporary pause, with the chart staying with a single range. RSI is near the middle and not indicating a drop. This might mean interest in the upward trend remains. I also see a return to the lower boundary of the range, which makes this a good point to follow the main direction. Alright guys, let's move ahead. Okay, what do we see here? Now we're dropping. Alright. I noticed that after following the trend, the chart stopped at the important area where there was a previous reaction. Selling activity has increased here. The upward movement has stalled. The indicators show uncertainty, no clear direction, which signals a possible clash of interests. Now it's time for the final round of this contest. Alright, let's take a look here. Time to go down. I see that after trying to continue upward, the movement sharply slowed. The upper boundary held and the chart quickly reversed. It's clear that sellers are starting to take control. The nature of the movement is changing. A structure is forming that, in my experience, often precedes a reversal. The indicators also begin to shift in the opposite direction. Overall, I agree with my assistant. That's it, friends. I think today everything was pretty clear. My assistant was more accurate and confident than ChatGPT. Honestly, there's no surprise. I've invested not only technology into its development, but also years of my own experience, observations, and trial and error. That's why it is so well adapted to real tasks. It was interesting to compare, and once again, it proves how important a personal approach is when working with smart tools. Well, that was an insightful experiment. And while GPT has its own internal logic, today my assistant handled things with more precision. No surprising, it's built on real-world observations, mistakes, dozens of iterations, and the experience I've been gathering for years. It doesn't just answer. It actually analyzes and pulls in relevant, real-time data. That's why it feels more like a partner giving focused input right when you need it. If you are curious to see how I use it live, check out my community. I walk through my thought process, explain each step, and stay connected with members who are just starting to figure things out. You will find the link in the description and the first pinned comment. Feel free to just look around and see how it works from the inside. Thanks for being here today. Hope to see you again soon. Take care.